I love the Elytra. I think it's a really, really, really cool item. It's perfect for an end game reward. It's fun to use. I love how Mojang take an unoriginal idea and turn it into something original. Hang gliders? Nah, Elytra. Backpacks? No, we're adding shulker boxes. Not only does it give fireworks in the end a ton of value, it also feels great to use. The physics may not make sense, but at least it feels like it does. The more I use it, the more enjoyable it is to mess around with. The Elytra is also a good way of finding structures which are extremely far away, such as the mansion, or more end cities. But here's the problem. One of the primary and defining features of Minecraft is the ability to build anything you want, wherever you want. You build for fun, or you could build to solve problems. Back in my day, before horses and Elytra, the world was interconnected with pathways, rivers, bridges, boat docks, and railway lines. Part of the fun in the game was making transport as efficient and interesting as possible. Then the Elytra came along and destroyed the need for these things. It's unbeatable. If you want to get from point A to point B efficiently, you need not build a path, you just fly. What's the use in boats, horses, minecarts, or pathways if you just have your Elytra? I understand this may be a good thing for some users who just want to move from place to place quickly and be done with the game, but at the end of the day, it unintentionally made some great features redundant. Suddenly, building railway lines, boat docks, or pathways no longer serve a functional purpose unless you're using them to automate a process. You only build these things if you want your world to look nice. It's a large portion of content which we as players can now just ignore. I see so many posts on Reddit which complain about getting to the game at the end and then having nothing to do. The replies always consist of advice like, you need to motivate yourself to find things to do. Write down a list of things you want to build and build them. It's all well and good, but I don't think that's good enough. I think the game should motivate the players to do stuff. You should feel like you're accomplishing something more than just aesthetics when you're building your boat river. It should feel like it's working towards solving a problem. And without that problem, if you can just fly, then what's the point? The game shouldn't rely on the players having to motivate themselves to be creative. They need things to do, goals to accomplish. Giving the players easy access to the world and making a large portion of content redundant makes it harder to be motivated to play at all. Am I saying the Elytra was a mistake? No. I think it's an awesome feature and I think I would be devastated if it were removed. But I do think it's overpowered. The thing to blame here is the mending enchantment. I think auto-repairing items with experience is a neat idea, but the mending enchantment does it too much. It's so easy to recharge your Elytra that it's too easy to rely on it all the time. But here's the issue with that. If we nerf the power mending has on the Elytra, technical players will just sit in an XP farm for 20 minutes and AFK. I know some people like AFK farms, but I don't see the fun in leaving your computer for 8 hours and having items stack up overnight. I just want to play Minecraft, not cookie clicker. I think it's good practice to come up with a solution that doesn't require players to grind all the time. Nerfs aren't always the best solution for these things. The situation with the Elytra is complicated because nerfs almost never, ever feel good for the players. What we can learn from this is implementing a weak item and then buffing it is far better than implementing an overpowered item and nerfing it. Some people may say that an alternative solution is to buff minecarts and horses so they can compete, but that's a horrible solution because of power creep. Power creep is what happens when you add overpowered items and then buff existing items to keep up. Everything becomes expensive, abundant, and overblown, and it's a surefire way to kill your game. So that's almost out of the question. Let's take a step back and think about why we have mending on the Elytra in the first place. The Elytras only spawn on the end ships, which are very, very far apart. They take a long time to find. If your Elytras are constantly breaking, then you must travel further and further and further away from the end islands every time you want a new one. This is a waste of the player's time and can increase world file size quite a bit. Thus, we have the mending enchantment, so players don't have to do this. The whole issue stems from the fact that the Elytra is essentially a non-renewable resource. By non-renewable, I mean you can't have an infinite amount of them in a finite world. But you know what is renewable? Nether stars. If you want a beacon, it's a difficult process, but you don't have to commit to an exponentially higher amount of work to obtain a new one each time. They're grindy to obtain, but nowhere near as grindy as finding a new Elytra. Imagine a situation where shulkers are respawnable and have a very rare chance to drop an Elytra shard. Putting these shards in a crafting table will output an Elytra. Now we have an excuse to nerf mending and even let the Elytra break. The player doesn't have to go out millions of blocks to get a new Elytra. Now, if the Elytra breaks, it can be brought back. It's still a nerf, but it's a more complex nerf. A nerf which more players are encouraged to work around. How do you make shulker farms? Can we build a pathway that leads to the end city where we can craft new Elytras? Is it even worth doing this? Could you go to another end city? You have a choice now. This way, a simple AFK XP farm is not an option anymore for renewable Elytras, but you are nudged to solve this problem in a direction which is more engaging than sitting around. Now, I doubt it's possible to create an actual shulker farm, so this means every time you want a new Elytra, you actually have to engage with the game. But alas, I should acknowledge the lingering elephant in the room. At the end of the day, it's still a nerf. And a nerf of any description is going to annoy some players. If Mojang came out one day and said, okay guys, Elytras are renewable now, but are now breakable and harder to repair, what will the reactions be? Will it even solve the problem? I don't want to act like what I've suggested will solve it, because it might not. I've identified this as being an issue, but I honestly can't think of anything which will stop players from hating this change, even if it ends up being a good one. Imagine if creepers were only added yesterday. How would the community deal with that? They're a great feature, but if added at the wrong time, people will get mad. Same with the Elytra. It really needs a nerf, but it's so overpowered, it's just too hard to turn back. All I should do is restate what I've said before. Implementing a weak item and then buffing it is far better than implementing an overpowered item and nerfing it. We've seen this happen with so many features. In one snapshot, observers accidentally gave out strong power instead of weak power. Mojang nerfed it, but it was too late. The players felt the power, and it was taken away. But, do you remember when health potions were nerfed? Do you remember when the food bar was added? Do you remember when golden apples were nerfed? Do you remember when attacking was nerfed? Do you remember when bone meal was nerfed? Do you remember when brewing stands suddenly required blaze powder to run? How many of you will think you'll remember the time the Elytra was nerfed? Sometimes you just gotta bite the bullet.